Today, I want to ask a pretty simple question, and it's one that I've asked on this channel here before. Are humans special? A fraught question, I know, because what on earth do we mean when we say special? Special compared to who? How are we scoring things? What's the rubric? Hello and welcome, my gentle and of course very modern apes. My name is Erica. This is my channel, Gutsick Gibbon, where I talk to you about the latest discoveries in paleoanthropology, primatology, evolutionary studies generally, things that I find interesting, and we also debunk a lot of pseudoscience. I'd like to take this video and muse a bit as to what I think the answer to this question is, and perhaps how we should conceptualize it. I'm making this video because I just finished this book, Humans by Sergio Almasija. It is a collection of perspectives on human evolution from world experts. So Dr. Almasija, who studies human and non-human ape evolution, so I'm familiar with his work in the Miocene, has collected a bunch of different answers to a bunch of different questions by folks who study human evolution via paleoanthropology, or genetics, or primatology, or evolutionary biology generally, or ethology, or archaeology. And he's asked them the same set of questions, one of which is, are humans special? I'll read you the specific way that he outlines this question, because Dr. Almasija is a scientist, and so he knows that he has to really define his terms. In the introduction, where he's explaining sort of the basis of each of the questions, for special, he says, are humans special when compared to other animals? Can the study of our closest living relatives, apes and other primates, help elucidate this question? With this question, he says, I intended to provoke some itch amongst the different experts and readers of this book. Although there is a broad spectrum of opinions, we could easily point towards two opposite extremes. On one hand, some think humans are unique among all creatures that have ever existed. On the other hand, others have a less anthropocentric view of our role in the universe. There are 103 perspectives on the questions, and most people answered all of them. So let's call it roughly 100 perspectives on the question, are humans special? I think it's worth defining what special actually means before I tell you what the perspectives looked like vaguely across this book. Special is defined as better, greater, or otherwise different from what is usual, with synonyms being exceptional or particular. But I still think that that's kind of confusing because amongst humans today, athletes, for example, may be special in what they do. I don't think that anyone would deny that Usain Bolt, Michael Phelps, Zhendjian Garnbrett, Simone Biles, these people are special amongst our species in that they blow everybody else away in their sport. There's something about their talent and their discipline and probably their anatomy that gives them a leg up on everybody else. But that's special in the sense that every other human has general capabilities similar to them. Like, I can swim, I can run, I can climb, and I can do, at the very least, a somersault, if not a cartwheel on a good day. But if you were to set me up against any of these people, I would get demolished, atomized, annihilated. But we would be doing, technically, the same type of thing. They just dial it up to 11. They are extraordinary in those areas, but they're not categorically different. If a human was born with wings, that would be special too, but that would be special categorically, truly set apart. No one else even has wings. There's no comparison to even be made. Like, if I'm swimming against Michael Phelps, I'm gonna cross that finish line eventually, but if you throw me off a cliff with Wing Guy, then I will crater into the ground like a Looney Tune. I will die. There's not even a competition to be had. And that's for the very simple reason that I don't have wings yet. And that's what makes this a categorical difference. It is something that is truly different, truly special, truly unique, and truly set apart. There's no through line. When we ask the question, are humans special amongst the rest of the animals and plants and organisms generally here on Earth, do we mean special in degree, or do we mean special in category, in kind, in type? There are a lot of people, as Sergio noted, on one extreme of this perspective. I've met some of them who believe that humans are categorically different from absolutely everything else on the face of the planet, that we are different in kind, that we are different in type. We are truly removed from the rest of the tree of life. And they argue this from various perspectives. Some will propose it from a religious perspective, that humans are the only animals, the only creatures with souls, that we are divine apes, if you will. There are other people who propose that it's something that we do, it's the technology that we use, the tools that we make, or that it's the morality that we display, or that it's quirks of our culture, like music, or ritual, or art, or storytelling. Some people will propose that it's culture itself, or that it's the impact that we have on the world around us, that it's our ability to manipulate the environment to such intense extremes that we're quite literally changing the climate in our biosphere. And with all of those questions, I think we have to ask, are those categorical differences? Are humans truly the only ones that do those things in the present or in the past? And if we aren't, how close is what we're doing to what other critters do? Let's start simply. Is there anything physical about humans that categorically separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom? Nope, and we've known this for a long time. The bones and teeth and muscles and organs and organ systems are found all across the class Mammalia. There's nothing about humans that makes us unique from an anatomical perspective, and this is especially striking when we look at our closest living relatives, the other members of the family Hominidae, or other great apes. To be considered an ape in general, or a hominoid, you have to be a catarrhine primate that has lost its tail. You need to have long arms with flexible shoulders, wrists, and ankles. You need to have a broad chest. You need to grow up slowly, and you need to have an absolutely enormous brain for your body size. From here, the different families and then different genera and species of ape will differ, and each of them has unique aspects to them that we can point out. Hylobatids, or gibbons, the little apes, are the only apes which are sexually dichromatic, meaning males and females of some species can be different colors depending on their sex. Orangutans are the only apes which have evolved bimaturism to an extreme degree, where males essentially have two separate puberties. Gorillas are the largest of the living apes, with the biggest males surpassing 500 pounds. Chimpanzees and bonobos are unique knuckle walkers, even compared to other knuckle walkers like gorillas. Their flexible wrists and lightweight bodies make them quicker at top speeds both in the trees and on the ground. Sometimes apes share interesting characteristics with one another to the exclusion of humans, like the knuckle walking that we see in chimps, bonobos, and gorillas, or the below branch suspension that we see in gibbons and orangutans, or the insane sexual dimorphism that we see in orangutans and gorillas, and sometimes humans share characteristics with these other apes to the exclusion of other such apes. Humans and gibbons have really low sexual dimorphism in stature and tend to pair bond. Humans and bonobos both have longer head hair as compared to the rest of our body hair. The apes, or hominoids, are not unique in that many members of that group share a lot with each other and share a lot in interesting patterns with other members of their superfamily. But I think we can all look at a human and say, humans are doing some weird stuff. So off the cuff, what kind of weird stuff is that? What makes humans kind of different from other animals that we see? Well, humans walk upright. That's pretty weird. We also have big brains for our body size. We grow up really, really slowly. We have little canine teeth for a primate, and we use a wide variety of tools. Let's start with bipedalism. That's pretty cool, and it is unique amongst living apes and amongst living primates. Not in its presence, though. Gibbons, for example, will walk almost exclusively bipedally when they come to the ground from the trees. They just don't come down from the trees very often. Bipedalism shows up in other mammals, such as the hopping that we see in macropods like kangaroos, but perhaps more importantly, there's a very successful group that everyone is familiar with that moves bipedally all the time when it's on the ground, and that group is called birds. Some birds spend a lot of time flying, and others spend a lot of time in the water, but all birds walk bipedally on two legs when they are strolling across the surface of the earth. And some do that exclusively. At least I've never seen an ostrich or a cassowary or an emu fly. And that's because this mode of locomotion is successful. They inherited it from another group of very prosperous bipedal archosaurs called the theropod dinosaurs. Bipedalism seems unique amongst the primates because it is uncommon, especially the obligate type of bipedalism that humans practice. But we actually see the emergence of these characters, the suite of physical traits that allow us to move the way that we do, through the fossil record in the form of hominins like Ardipithecus ramidus, the Australopiths, and early members of genus Homo, who acquire the traits needed to move bipedally and perfect them. Big brains obviously aren't unique to humans. A human brain is smaller than like an elephant's brain or the brain of a blue whale. But what we actually mean when we say big brains is big brains relative to our body size. This is why a Chihuahua and a Great Dane are roughly equal in their cognitive abilities. Humans have really high encephalization quotients, which means our brains are very big when taking our body size into account. But two things are important to remember when we look at the EQ of humans compared to other animals. The first is that similar gaps exist between similar groups of animals. And the second is that that gap is acquired through the fossil record in our hominins. We see brains get larger faster than bodies are getting larger. And by the time we reach our species in the very recent past, about 300,000 years ago, there are many hominins who aren't Homo sapiens who have EQs as large or larger than us. And of course, there's the little issue that EQ does not map neatly onto cognitive abilities. Humans grow up slow, but so do other apes. Orangutan kids won't leave their moms until as late as 12 years of age. In apes and other cognitive species, taking a long time to grow up is related to having to learn the skills you need to survive. But if we're just talking about growth rates in general or development rates in general, many species of reptile and mollusk have us beat. For a primate, humans have really small canine teeth, especially when looking at something like a male mandrill or either sex in gibbons. But humans aren't the only species to reduce our canines. We see something similar in titi monkeys. Titi monkeys are a type of New World monkey, and they, like humans, have small canine teeth compared to their body size, and perhaps not coincidentally, they also form lifelong pair bonds. A reduction in the size of the tooth is not that big of a deal. Other primates have also reduced their canine tooth size or the size of other types of teeth in their mouth. Sometimes mammals will lose a type of tooth entirely, like rodents just don't have canine teeth. But to make matters better, we can actually see the reduction of the canines across hominin evolution from our split with chimpanzees to anatomically modern Homo sapiens. When it comes to physical characteristics, there is nothing about humans that stands out as wholly unique compared to the rest of the animal kingdom. Like, let's just list a couple more. Humans have visible whites of the eyes, or sclera. Well, so do other primates. And other animals, like dogs for that matter. Humans have prominent noses, so do proboscis monkeys. Humans have lost the baculum, or penis bone. So have spider monkeys, dolphins, bats, and countless other lineages of mammal. Humans have really weird, unique spines. So do hero shrews. Apparently the spine of the hero shrew, which is adapted for their fossorial or digging lifestyle, is so strong that you as an adult human could stand on their back without breaking it. I don't know if that's true though, don't try it. Humans are weird because we're mammals that are relatively hairless. Well, so are elephants and all cetaceans. Humans aren't the only animals to sweat, or to have flat faces, or to have small jaws, or to have difficult births. As I said, we're not the only animals that walk upright, or have big brains, or have little canines. In fact, in the overwhelming majority of ways, humans are pretty typical for a mammal. We have 4 limbs, and at the tip of each limb, we have 5 digits. We have 4 types of teeth, 5 types of vertebrae, and a pretty standard omnivore gastrointestinal system for eating everything we can get our grubby primate mitts on. Physically, there is nothing that sets humans apart categorically from the rest of the animal kingdom, and even the ways in which we're weird, we can see the emergence of those traits through the fossil record. This, as I said, has been known for quite some time. Even Linnaeus, a creationist who lived before the advent of the theory of evolution and the father of taxonomy himself, grouped humans with other apes, saying, "Yet man does recognize himself as an animal. But I ask you and the whole world for a generic differentia between man and ape which conforms to the principles of natural history. I certainly know of none. If I were to call man ape or vice versa, I should bring down all the theologians on my head, but perhaps I should still do it according to the rules of science." So if it's not something we physically are, maybe it's something we do. One of the last characteristics that separates humans from other living apes is our advanced tool culture. But the key word there is advanced, because we know that other animals use tools, and they use quite sophisticated ones, as we've come to learn through the decades. Tool use is common in social cognitive species across the animal kingdom. They may use tools like coconuts for shelter or weave nests out of leaves. They may use tools to groom or scratch themselves. The most common tools are used in the context of acquiring food, as seen in corvids, which alter twigs to reach hidden grubs, or dolphins who use sponges to protect their beaks while foraging for sharp prey. Primates use every tool in the book. They fish for termites using modified sticks and grass, they probe for honey to keep their hands safe from stings, and they crack hard-shelled nuts with hammers and anvil rocks. The same strategy works on shellfish, too. Some apes even use sharpened sticks to hunt for prey like bush babies. Chimpanzees and orangutans treat wounds and parasites using medicinal plants and create sponges to soak up water for drinking or grooming. Tool use is not innate in most species and must be taught to youngsters by patient adults. This even leads to cultural differences in tool type and use depending on the population in animals like chimps. Still, I think anyone can look at the types of tools that most other animals use and the types of tools that humans use today, and they can see that there is a gulf there. Look at how I'm communicating to you now with a camera and a microphone and a computer in a house that is lit and air-conditioned. This is a difference in degree, but it feels like an order of magnitude, no? The problem is, I didn't make any of these tools. I didn't make my lights, and I didn't make my house, and I didn't make the microchips in my computer. These tools are the result of the accumulation of human knowledge across hundreds and thousands and arguably millions of years. We wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't have the advent of one very particular tool, writing, that allows for intergenerational exchange of knowledge. This is why when Einstein discovered relativity, he didn't have to discover Newtonian physics first, because Newton wrote that down. Without writing, a single incredibly game-changing tool, we're not that much more advanced than other hominins or even other great apes with the types of tools that we use. Humanity today is much further along than humanity 300,000 years ago, but one human today versus one human 300,000 years ago, placed in a savannah environment, I've got my money on the latter. Writing is a phenomenal tool, but it's not what makes us human, and it's certainly not what makes us special. In part because not every human group uses writing, and certainly not every human group used it over the course of our evolution. One thing all human groups do use, however, that may be pivotal towards our categorization as special, either categorically or by degree, is what necessarily precedes writing, and that's language. Brutally, language is a system of communication that consists of grammar and vocabulary. So using that basic definition, are humans the only animals with language? I've covered language at length elsewhere on this channel, but at the very least some other animals display systems very similar to language, a proto-language if you will. Among primates, marmosets have names for one another. Gelada communication systems follow basic human language laws. Syntax is found in guanins like Campbell's monkeys. These guys have words for predator that can be specified with subsequent calls to alert others if the predator is coming from above, like a crowned eagle, or from below, like a leopard. Chimpanzees communicate frequently with gestures, the dictionary of which overlaps by around 90% with the gestural dictionary of human toddlers. Bonobos were just recently found to exhibit compositionality, the ability to combine words and achieve larger meanings, a trait once thought to be unique to us. In addition to displaying the precursors to human language, some researchers argue that living apes can learn hundreds of human words through sign language or lexicograms.
Put your collar in the potty.
So language then isn't a categorical difference either. It is an extreme one of degree. And this makes sense. Social species need to have complicated forms of communication because they interact not only with their environment, but with one another. And this leads me to the next question, the theory of mind, the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. This is something that has long been thought to be unique to humans and long been thought to be the reason why we do a lot of things, from altruistic behaviors to war. So do other animals have a theory of mind? Non-human primates empathize. They console one another after fights, share with the injured, and selectively inform the ignorant of dangers. They have a sense of humor, are wildly curious, and love one another deeply. Sometimes they pair bond for life, and sometimes they cheat. They laugh when they're tickled and feel repulsion when they are disgusted. Apes play politics, forming coalitions to overthrow leaders. They cooperate for food as well, even if that individual doesn't get a reward. They understand fairness and justice among their peers. They may defend the weak, or they may gang up on loners. They may risk life and limb to help unrelated peers, or they may commit genocide against a neighboring group. They murder, they take revenge, they comfort, they grieve. To deny them sentience or sapience or theory of mind is to be blind, deaf, and dumb. So if other animals understand humor and grief and vengeance, what exactly is left? Maybe it's art. Maybe it's the human capacity to make things that we don't really need to make. Anyone and many things can learn to make art, but outside of exceptions, examples of expression for the sake of expression, art seems to be limited to those with the time and security to make it. Not every people group makes art, and a few animals may exhibit types of art in the wild depending on how we classify it, but this is a tricky one because the definition of art is so hard to nail down. Maybe it's music. Other animals seem to enjoy music, and rhythm is far from unique to humans. Other apes drum recreationally in the wild and in captivity, and we see this in proboscideans like elephants as well. Music is, of course, also the backbone of entire animal groups, from birds to gibbons. Maybe it's storytelling, or at the very least, the precursor to that, imagination. This too is hard to quantify, but other apes seem to display a form of imagination. Like human children, chimpanzees will carry around sticks as if they are baby dolls. I don't think they're under any delusion they're playing with an actual baby, meaning they're using their imagination and playing pretend. Adults don't seem to do this, although we aren't in their heads, but it doesn't seem too far-fetched to suggest that the human capacity to imagine arose from role-playing innate to ape kids. For now, it's clear that insofar as we can test it, there's nothing that humans do that lacks an antecedent of some sort in some other species along our trajectory, or that lacks an analog in the animal kingdom as a whole when time and desire is there. Other animals can use resources like currency, transform their environment, and punish rule breakers in their groups. Definitions can be tricky, but they may domesticate one another, plan ahead for future tasks, and adorn their bodies. They are all varying degrees of sentient and sapient, with far more than we are willing to admit, experiencing life much as we do. Okay, maybe what makes humans unique then is an understanding of death and mortality, or a brush with the divine. Maybe it's religion, maybe it's ritual. This too fails to separate all humans from all other animals. Death makes our closest relatives behave strangely, although they aren't performing any funerals. Some hominins in our past may or may not have exhibited religion in full, with Neanderthals burying their dead, leading some to propose that they had a full-on belief in the afterlife. If burying your dead means that you have religion, then we must grant that ability variability to Asian elephants too, as these mighty creatures were recently observed digging holes, placing their dead calves within them, and placing sediment on top. They bury their dead. Ritual, too, is another story, with some suggesting that this capacity exists in chimpanzees through rain dances, although certainly we find traces of it in our hominin relatives. At the end of the day, nothing we are and nothing we do is wholly disconnected from the rest of the tree of life. All of it has analogs or precursors. In some ways, we're absolutely just like everything else. In other ways, we take what other critters do and dial it up to 11. But some of the things that humans do, even with their analogs or their precursors, are distant from those analogs and precursors, and truly they appear to be strange indeed as we employ them. So we can ask the question then, with all of that in mind, are humans special? Of those that answered this question in Sergio's book, the overwhelming majority of them did not give a straightforward yes or no answer. A few people did say yes, humans are unequivocally special and unique, and there's something about us that's strange and odd. Some people even pointed to the divine. Others, a slightly larger proportion, said that no, there's nothing about humans that separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom in any categorical way, and even the ways in which we differ by large degrees aren't as impressive as people might have you believe. Those individuals were overwhelmingly those who study other apes, the primatologists and the paleoprimatologists. Some people argued that any of our individual characteristics aren't truly exceptional, but it is the combination of them, a unique mixture of traits that allowed us to eventually take over the world the way that we have. I think you can synthesize all of that largest middle section of answers, the yes buts, the no howevers, as humans aren't necessarily special, but we are rare. I like the word rare as a descriptor for humans because it doesn't hold the same moral baggage as the word unique or the word special, and I think it affords us an appropriate degree of nuance. Diamonds are rare, so are some cancers. True selflessness is rare, so is true sociopathy. Other animals are rare too. Arctic copepods are 70% body fat, a degree of body fat seen in no other critter. Greenland sharks live for hundreds of years, and there are more ants, nematodes, and krill than any other animal. Vampire bats drink blood while bearded vultures eat bones. Some animals, like sea slugs, eat light, like plants do. Whales are the loudest singers, dragonflies the deadliest hunters. Black kites are the only other animal known to intentionally spread wildfires. Pangolins are the only mammals fully covered with scales. There are only 3 venomous mammals, the Solenodon, Slowloris, and Platypus, but each make and use their venom in 3 unique ways. Intelligence is widespread across the animal kingdom. Octopus, jumping spiders, elephants, crows, capuchin monkeys, dogs, parrots, raccoons, pigs, and apes. Compassion and cruelty are about as common. Humans are rare as intelligent and emotional creatures with weird teeth, complex social systems, a bizarre and long life history, a strange way of moving, a capacity to manipulate our environments, and a drive to use tools. So are elephants. Naked mole rats check most of these boxes too, as do dolphins and other apes. We are rare animals indeed, but we are wonderfully and dreadfully connected to the rest of life on this earth, the only place so far known to harbor a tree of life.
It seemed to me that another picture of the Earth, this one taken from 100,000 times farther away, might help in the continuing process of revealing to ourselves our true circumstance and condition. It had been well understood by the scientists and philosophers of classical antiquity that the Earth was a mere point in a vast, encompassing cosmos. But no one had ever seen it as such. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam.
All life on Earth is both product and contributor to its place in space and time. This complex web of life, of which we are a part, has been millennia in the making.
We are one species of about 5,500 mammalian species that exist on planet Earth today, and that's just a tiny fraction of all species that have ever lived on the planet in past times.
We're just part of the animal kingdom, and that we're not the only beings with personalities and minds capable of reasoning, and certainly not the only beings with emotions like happiness, sadness, fear, despair, nor are we the only beings capable of giving and receiving love.
To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
We are rare creatures, and I suppose it's up to us to determine whether that is a good or a bad thing. So what do you think? Do you think humans are special? Do you think we're rare? Can you think of anything that humans do that absolutely nothing else does, in that they don't have an analog or a precursor at all? Let me know in the comments section. If you like what I do, please consider supporting the channel in the free way by liking, commenting, and subscribing. And if you want to help me out in a more financial way, you can join my Patreon. Patrons get early access to videos when I'm on top of things, which, you know, again, as I always say, it's feast or famine over there. As always, I want to thank you from the bottom of my gentle and, of course, very modern heart for being such a curious and rare primate, and I'll see you real soon next time.